Hello everyone, this week we will explore how to paint this architecture using watercolors. Welcome to my home studio where I share my passion for watercolor paintings. My name is Dinesh. Today we will explore how to approach painting architecture in watercolors. I will show you how to simplify those intricate details, analyze your reference, and think in terms of positive and negative shapes. We will also dive into understanding shadow patterns and how to use soft and hard edges to achieve a realistic look. Before we dive in, be sure to hit the subscribe button to become a part of our ever-growing creative community. Now, without further ado, let's get started, everyone. Before I start any kind of painting I do, I usually simplify my reference. I think about my positive and negative shapes. So the positive shapes are the architecture itself, and the negative shapes are the sky. And the next step I usually think about is the light and shadows, where the lights are coming from and where the shadows side. So the reason being, this will help me to simplify all the things I need to do in my painting. And the details I want to add, I usually squint my eyes, and that will give the details that need to be added in my painting. As for the supply goes, I usually use Saunders Waterford cold press 140 LB 300 GSM, and for the paints I use Winsor Newton professional water grade watercolor paints, and you can use any paints you want. When it comes to sketching, I usually think about the bigger shapes first, and I'll slowly bring it down to the medium shapes and the smaller details. And you could see that I'm constantly comparing the angles while I'm sketching, because sketching is really important in watercolors, because watercolor is not an opaque medium, so we have to plan our sketching really good in order to get really good details. So in architecture, it is really necessary to capture the details as accurate as possible, and there's a little bit of leeway. You don't have to follow to a T, but I'm also trying to block some shadow patterns as well. So this will act as a map, so I know where the light and the shadow goes exactly. To expedite the process, I'm also painting in sped up this video 5 times, so don't think that I'm painting this sketching this fast. So what I want to do is I want to paint the negative shape first. So the negative shape is the sky, and I also flipped my watercolor paper, and I also clipped on a watercolor wooden board, so I can just flip it and I can put this sky wash. And this is one of the really hard thing to paint, is just like painting over the details. And this is why watercolor can be a little bit tricky, because you have to think about your next step and plan your painting. And that's why a lot of people give up on watercolor painting, because it requires a lot of step. And I didn't realize that watercolor is a master medium. Then I realized as I was painting it for a long time. So now I added the shadows, or the first wash, for the statue at the top, and I'm slowly bringing it down. And this is the wash for the architecture itself, the building which is holds it, and you can see that it looks super light. But I'm also mixing a little bit of warmish tone. So I'm using amber for it, and I'm also mixing a little bit of this bluish cobalt blue with white paint in it. So the first step doing this is just to think about it's just going to act as just staining the washes. So what I mean by that is look at the local color and try to get as close as possible. And this is not the exact color we're going to add. We're going to increase the value as we layer it slowly. And this is what I was thinking. I'm checking that is there anything warmer or cooler. I'm just putting the colors close to it. And whenever I do architectural details like this, architectural painting, I don't think about being close to my reference. Because it's my painting, because I like to change a lot of stuff while I paint. So now the first wash is almost done. So now I'm going to add the shadows. So anything that is in reality that is white, and the shadows are a little bit cooler. So I'm using cobalt blue, and I also want to have a little bit of warmth in it. I'm also trying to add a little bit of yellow ochre in it too. And even in the shadow side, there is also a darker value, and I'm trying to capture it. And whenever I paint architecture like this, I always think about the edges. So is it a sharp edge or a softer edge? by having different kind of edges and different variety of edges in architectural painting, that will look really nice for a watercolor painting. And you can see that I introduced a little bit of a sharper shadow at the top, and I'm introducing a sharper shadow and softer shadow at the bottom. And this also shows form, and you can see just by copying the shadow pattern, thinking in terms of hard and soft edges, I'm able to create this 3D look for the statue by itself. So now I'm focusing on the wings itself, and now I added a line which is kind of capturing the form of it, and I use clean water to soften the edge. And as soon as I soften the edge, you can see that it kind of like created that form already. It kind of looks like it's curved at the top. So now I'm focusing on the top part of the architecture, and again the same thing. I'll just introduce. I didn't stain the wash for the top part, so I'm just going and doing it now. And I'm trying to. So the other thing I usually do while I paint architecture is to thinking about, is there any other highlights I can leave so I don't have to use white paint. And this is another. This is a old traditional, old school method, like leaving the paper as highlights instead of going and painting it. But sometimes when you paint this intricate details, sometimes it will be a little bit hard to leave some highlights, but it's okay to go and fix it. So don't be so restrained. I won't be really restrained on it. So now I'm painting the shadow side for the top part, and you can see that as soon as I'm adding the shadow pattern, the lighting will start appearing on the scene. I'll start keep building this shadow pattern on that side, and if I squint my eyes, I can clearly see in the reference that this side of the plane, which is facing towards the right hand side, it's everything in the shadow. So again, even in the shadows, there is also half shadows and there is also darker shadow. So everything exists in reality. And when I paint, I also take some time to look at my shadow pattern in my reference. And in the beginning, when I started my journey in watercolors, I didn't give that much attention to where the shadow patterns are, where are the hard edges or soft edges. But nowadays when I paint, I try to study and paint together as well. So next time when I paint, these are the details that will be registered in my mind, so I can blindly go and paint. And you can see that I'm adding the second half shadows for the statue, which is sitting on the top. And just by adding the shape of the shadow, you can see that everything comes alive. And this is one of the things I also learned from one of the artists, is thinking everything in shapes instead of thinking that you're painting something. And this is the top part of this railing, which is kind of like goes like a couple of C shapes. So I'm trying to capture that shape as well. And before it dries out, I'm adding another darker shadow as well. And because I'm using wet on wet principle, so it gives a really nice foil for the watercolor painting. And this is another thing I want to see. I want to create a soft edge. I want to make sure to create that. So I wet the paper, then I'll add the paint on top of it. Now again, the shadow sides are a little bit cooler, so I'll try to get the cooler side. And you can see that I also used a clean brush to capture that light as well. And now I'm adding the shadow side. This is the most difficult part, is painting around the edges, the negative shapes. There's one thing I enjoy painting in watercolors, but there's one thing I kind of like, I wouldn't say hate it, but something this frustrates me is going around painting the values and colors around it. And I'm also trying to capture the different capture of details in my reference. And if I squint my eyes, most of the colors in that shadow side is bluish gray, bluish and warmish gray. So that's where it is. But since I'm painting, this is my watercolor painting, I try to have a little bit of vibrancy in it, because watercolor goes a little bit dull. So what I mean by that, it goes lighter and lighter. So I want to have a little bit of color in my reference to have a little bit of vibrancy in architecture paintings, and it look really good as we add the shadows and lighting in our painting. So now I'm focusing only on the shadow side. There is also a couple of darker values that exist in shadow side itself. So I'm trying to introduce those arch edges on this architecture to create this really nice variation. And you can also see at the bottom there is also a light and shadow, but it went underneath it. Even on the shadow side, you could see that there's a little bit of a darker tone as well. And I'm trying to capture that curve as close as possible to create this really nice architecture. Again, I painted this architecture because I was really inspired by John Sargent, and he paints architecture in a really amazing way. And even if you notice his architecture work, it looked vibrant than it looks dull. And in our reference, you can see that the reference looks dull, but we can introduce a little bit of vibrancy for sure. But making sure that we are capturing the light and shadows as close as possible. And now I'm just focusing on one of the rails, and as soon as you can see, even in the cylindrical objects, they usually have a sharper shadow at the top, but as it rolls over, it will have a softer edges. And as soon as I capture that, and you can see that it looks really nice, and it also shows the forms really good as well. So now I'm trying to add the shadow pattern at the top of it, and now I'm also introducing, I forget to add the shadows at the top, so I'll be focusing on it. And again, thinking everything in shapes, checking my edges and where it's coming and where it's going. And these are everything in the shadow. And I also left some eyelets a little bit there on the right hand side at the right top, just to have a little bit of light coming through it. I'm also adding a couple of some darker shadows as well, and as you can see it here, as soon as I add it, you can see that it gives more forms to it. And it's a slow build up. It's kind of like a slow burn. In watercolors, that's really important. You have to have patience of building things slowly. And sometimes when I paint, I do lose patience. So what I usually do is, I don't paint that day. I put whatever I can and whatever I did that day, and I will just put it aside, and I'll focus on some other painting. And I'll come back and I focus on details later. So that way, you also have a fresh eye to look at your reference and your painting, and you are not competing with the reference, looking at the reference for a long time. And that also helps too. Sometimes when you're painting, you feel like it's not working, just put it aside and work on something else, and go back to the next day or after a week, and you will be surprised how your memory replenishes, and you can go back and get a really good painting. I love painting horses, and I'm glad that there's a horse at the top. And again, I simplified it as simple as possible. I'm thinking when I paint, how can I simplify my architecture details, yet it looks same as my reference? So that's why I was thinking. And this also comes with the designing too. I think most painters or most artists, I strongly believe that they are really good designers as well. The more they paint, they like to design their painting in such a way that they're telling a story, and it also looks really cool. And even though I'm painting for quite a bit now, still I feel that I'm still learning how to design, how to create a good composition. And I think it's a lifelong a journey if you're an artist. It's a long process, and you have to learn every day to get better at it. And this is one of the artists. I was watching a video, and one of really well-known artists, he said that painting is really easy to do, but it will only take 10 years to learn it. So I strongly believe that, because it's kind of any other skill, but being an artist and painting, that requires a lot of time and effort to learn it. So now I'm focusing on I will say the second darker value, and this kind of like, you can think of like half shadow. And as soon as I add that, you can see that the planes started appearing. So there's a bottom plane, there's a top plane, and everything started appearing. So that's another thing is, I'm also painting in a 9x12, and it's really hard to paint in a 9x12, because your strokes have to be really clean and it have to be really thin to show an architecture the scale of it. Whereas if I would have painted in a 12 by 18, it would be really easier because it will be easy for me to show the planes and everything. And for a 9 by 12, it's a little bit hard to capture the details like this. And I'm also trying to soften some of the edges at the top, and you can see that you can also see at that rail where I'm painting now, I also left some white bits here and there. So these white bits leaves here and there creates this a really nice contrast against a darker value. And this is one of the rails, and like one of the columns, not rails, sorry, has a lot of details as well. Again, when I'm painting it, how can I simplify it yet it looks like a reference? So that's what I was thinking. I'm not thinking about anything else. And you can see that I'm slowly building up the half shadow. As soon as we do it, things started sitting on place, and everything starting looking a little bit realistic, and you can see the form started appearing. And there's also one thing I keep in mind while I paint is, as soon as I put a stroke, I'll squint my eyes, I'll see the painting. Does this painting look 3D? Does this form turns and it shows that there is the planes are started showing really good. So those are the things I'll keep in mind. So now you can see that I'm started adding the darker shadows or the darker details, and you can also see at the top I also went and added the lettering and everything on top of it as well, just to capture the details a little bit better. And again, I want to capture the details on the column, so I was able to do it. So even though the white statue, which is the top, which is the main focal point, I want to make sure to capture that as close as possible. Now I'm squinting my eyes, I'm seeing like where else I can bring back the eyelids. So I'm using white paint for it and bring back some of the eyelids from our reference. So this of the painting looks like at the end. I also taped my watercolor paper to get the crisp edges. Now it's your turn. Take my reference or use your own architecture reference and try to apply the principles of what I've showed today. Thinking in shadows, thinking about edges, hard and soft edges. And don't try to do a pretty painting, just to capture the details which is necessary by squinting your eyes. And let's see what you can come up with. Thank you once again for watching this painting tutorial. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the video in the comment section below. If you have any other watercolor related topics, reach out to me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or leave a comment down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and be sure to hit the subscribe button to become a part of our learning community. By subscribing, you will receive weekly upload notifications and stay updated on our channel. And share with your fellow artists, friends and family. And good luck with your painting, folks.